The problem is emergency funds are actually the hardest kind of funds to pick up from your budget or place in your budget. I said I believe that there's a world where you can so live your life and be any, not million, but you can be any little and yet you do not have believe that it belongs to them. I don't want to remain a 9-to-5 worker. I'm not that kind of person. I am working in this 9-to-5 to raise up enough money to sponsor my own personal business. I promise you will not build a house. I bet it you won't build the house because you keep on touching that money on emergencies, on emergencies, on emergencies. At the end of the day, you will not be able to build the house. A quick tip on how to build an emergency fund. So first and foremost, I would like to define what an emergency fund is. And I believe and I feel that this information is very, very necessary and important to each and every person. Whether you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, you're a worker, you work in 9-to-5, you're a content creator, regardless, as long as you're a human being and you're living within an ecosystem, you need to have this knowledge of an emergency fund. So what is an emergency fund? Now, an emergency fund is, okay, fine, let me just start with this example. Have you ever been in a situation whereby after getting a huge amount of money, maybe say by the end of the month, maybe like your salary or like you just hit a business deal and you just completed the deal and you got a lot of money from it, right? And at the end of the month, you have already made your budgeting. Oh, I'm going to put this money into school fees of my kids. I'm going to put this money into spending, dating my December. I'm putting this particular amount into this. I'm putting this particular amount into that. And after spending all of that money and all of that, and you are without cash, but you feel satisfied, like, okay, well, at least I have achieved this and this and this and this and this. I am fine for the month. All of a sudden, an incident happens, like a very big, massive incident, maybe like medical emergency, or let's say anything. It could be anything, any form of serious emergency that demands you a whooping big amount of money. And you're like, oh God, how I wish this came earlier. I would have diverted some money or planned this out in my budgeting. Yes, that is what an emergency fund is. So an emergency fund is a particular amount of money that you plan out for emergencies. Now, am I wishing any of us that bad things will happen to us? No. In Jesus' name, nothing bad will happen to you. Your life will go smooth. But life is life and bad things happen in life, right? So we must always have emergency funds. Now, the problem is emergency funds are actually the hardest kind of funds to hook up from your budgeting or place in your budgeting. There was a video I saw recently that was trending on TikTok where a lot of content creators or individuals were trying to do their budgeting, and I noticed that somebody would put 50k for mommy, 20k for daddy, this one for this, that one for school fees, and nobody in that video was trying to pass a message about emergency fund. I think the essence of the videos was talking about the importance of obli. But you get, emergency fund is one of those kind of funding or ideologies that we are kicking out of our very lives, and it will be very, very, very costly. Like, I mean very costly. I have had personal experiences with not being prepared for emergencies, and it would really scatter you, because by the end of the day you start looking out to borrow money. I mean, this is what leads to people taking loans. I was telling somebody one day, and I said I believe that there's a world where you can so live your life and be any, not million, but you can be any little, and yet you will not have to take loans. The person was like, no, it's not possible. When you have emergency, now won't you take loans? And this is the solution. I told him, emergency funds. That is why it's good for every person to have what we call emergency funds. So I believe by now, I didn't give you a direct definition of emergency funds, but you get what emergency funds are, right? Yeah, sure. So now, how do you work on it? Now, the first way to start hooking up your emergency funding is to first and foremost correct your mindset on the importance and value of emergency funds, and also knowing that emergencies are part of the human life. Once you have corrected your mind upstairs that come on, emergencies are part of the human life, anything can happen anywhere at any time, I always need money for an emergency. Once you place high value on it in your budgeting, you'll be able to place major priorities on emergencies. Take for example, let me tell you about my budget. Now, this is how I budget my money at the end of the day. I'm a salary earner as much as I am a flexible earner. You get, I have gigs that I do. Yes, I get money on the side, but I'm also a salary earner. Now, this is how I strategize my salary, or this is how I break down my salary percentages. Now, I always have that 30%. Funny enough, when I break down my salary, I don't always pay myself first or cut out money for my own personal interest. The first 30% goes to everything that would make me make sure that I don't lose my job. is actually funny, I get. But my first 30% goes to making sure that I get things or valuables that will ensure the safety of my job. Take for example, I work in a school, and in the school I work, right, they are very, very particular about your dressing. I mean, your corporate dressing. So I make sure that I invest 30% into getting good dresses or renewals of my gadgets that I use at my place of work, like my laptop batteries, my laptop chargers, my phone. Those are very important things that I need in my place of work, right? Now, my other 30% goes into my transportation. I live very far from my place of work, so transportation is very important because I need to get to work as early as possible. So that means 60% already is going to making sure that my job is being maintained, like being maintained. Now I have how many percent left? 40%. Now out of that 40%, I have a 10% that I use for my savings. 10% I use for my savings. The other 10% I use to pay my tithes. Now that savings is not my emergency funds. My own understanding of what my savings should be about is for projects, because I do believe that in the long term I don't want to remain a 9-to-5 worker. I'm not that kind of person. I am working in this 9-to-5 to raise up enough money to sponsor my own personal business. Sure, you get the gist. So my savings is for that purpose. Or your savings can also be for you want to build your own house and you're saving towards it, right? Another person's own can be, my savings is directed at, let's say I want to, it could be anything for any of us. I want to move out of the country, I want to, it could be anything. I want to do a course, it can be anything. That can be your savings. Now we are left with how many percent? 20 solid percent. Now 10 solid percent out of that money is my emergency funds. I save it up somewhere. So my emergency funds is also like a savings, but it's a savings I don't touch except if there's a serious emergency. Then the last 10% is for my flex. Now someone will say, why you be sorting yourself out with just 10%? See, 10% is not a bad thing. Neither is 10%. Yeah, I know, definitely 10% is better than 30%, but neither of it is not a bad thing. The problem is your income is, or your salary is not big enough. I mean, 10% of 1 million is bigger than 10% of 100,000, right? Sure you get. So let's don't talk too much about it. Yeah, so that's about that. So that is how I structure my month. And at the end of the day, I have been able to see that since I have been doing that, I have not been taking loans, because I used to be someone that is so heavy on loans. So heavy on loans. Like, I'm only taking loans to solve my issues, right? Because by the time I've strategized my month, I would have so realized that I would have so spent heavily on some things. And when an emergency pops up, I don't have any money behind the scenes to just solve those emergencies, because I am one person that is highly principled on not touching my savings. I don't touch my savings, so I lock it up somewhere. In another video, I'll talk to you about apps where you can save up and you'll be assured that you don't get access to your savings, right? But I am so high on that. Some people make a lot of that mistake of they just save up casually, maybe in another separate account, and when an emergency comes up, maybe that saving is for you want to build your house and you're saving up for it, or buy a car and you're saving up for it. Now an emergency now comes and you now touch that savings. I promise you, you will not build a house. I bet it you won't build the house, because you keep on touching that money on emergencies. At the end of the day, you will not be able to build the house. So that's why I advise people, I advise my clients. I tell them, when I'm giving them my financial advice, I'm bringing financial consultations, I tell you, you know what, get an emergency savings. Save for emergencies. It could be anything. It could be medical issues or what have you. Save something up for that. Now, that is why some of us have insurances. You set up an insurance account. That's fine. That's good for you. But I would actually prefer than do that. That is very good. And I'll make a video where I talk about that. But I'll actually also prefer having emergency savings. Emergency savings, yeah. And you can do that for yourself. So I want you to go back, look at, sit down. I have that issue with a lot of us. A lot of us don't just sit down and critically analyze your financial reports, which is very bad. Some of us spend so spontaneously. But if you're in Nigeria or you're in Africa, where our economy is imbalanced, you can't spend spontaneously. You must learn to sit down and critically analyze your finances. Yeah, right. So that's that about that. That's that about emergency funds. And thank you for watching. The next video, I have a lot of more information and more things and tips to show you guys that will elevate you financially and your business from this level to another level. Thank you very, very much for watching.